Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about Persepolis, which is a graphic novel. It was published in 4 volumes actually, in French originally, from 2000 to 2003 by Marjane Satrapi, who actually just passed away unfortunately, so that's really sad. She was quite young, I think 56 years old. But this book, actually, I'm not sure if you should really call it a graphic novel. So now it's been published in 2 volumes. There's Persepolis 1 and Persepolis 2. And I read the combined volumes for my book club. To me, graphic novel kind of insinuates something that is one whole project or has one kind of authorial message or intent behind it. But this is actually, I think, better characterized as maybe even like a collection of, I wouldn't say comic strips, but like graphic chapters. So it's been put together, but it is essentially multiple short vignettes that are drawn in her very distinctive black and white style. The story is autobiographical. It's essentially a memoir, I would say, of Marjane's time as a young girl in Tehran, and then just living through the establishment of the Islamic Republic and going through the 1979 revolution. It's told from the perspective and through the eyes of her as a young girl, but also as she develops into a teenager and a young woman. She goes overseas to Austria because her parents sent her overseas, but then eventually she does come back to Iran for a few different reasons, but also because I think it was very difficult to have an immigrant life in Europe as well, and being from Iran was difficult. It's really just telling that story and the experiences that she went through, and the artwork itself is very bold and almost childlike for the younger part of the story, but also a bit cheeky. There's definitely illustrations that poke fun at the various absurd situations she was in and all of the kind of violence and danger that was implicit or explicit really throughout her life and her city. There is a fair amount of, I would say, historical context. She does talk about specific leaders, protesters, the youth that were supportive of overthrowing the Shah and the monarchy, and then how it transitioned into being an Islamic Republic and everything that came with the clerics being in power. That, I think, in itself is really valuable. It's definitely kind of a unique point of view and a part of history that is well known, but maybe not from this perspective. And I think when this book came out, or when the various volumes were being published, because Marjane did end up moving to France in French, it was really lauded for being able to depict this lesser known history. She talks about the veil, she talks about, this overall kind of atmosphere of political terror, and then she also talks about what it's like to be an immigrant overseas and kind of the prejudices against her when her European friends found out where she was from. Just all of the complexity that you would imagine from the life that she has lived. I think for me, my expectations were a little bit too high. I was expecting one complete novel. So a lot of my criticisms were it felt disjointed, it felt choppy, there's no proper ending. I didn't feel like there was a common through line through everything. It really just felt like her diary. And now that I know a little bit of the publishing context, it makes sense because it was published in volumes, it was published episodically, and I think it's better to think of this more as a compilation of comic strips, so to speak, than something that is like a complete work. For example, I really love The Art of Charlie Chan Hak Chai by Sunny Liu. That is a complete work that's like fully thought out and fleshed out. I also think Sabrina or Acting Class by Nick Jonasso are really fantastic examples of graphic novels that fully use the medium to create something that's more than just the sum of its parts. For me, this is very much like an artistic depiction, a visual representation of her diary, and her life was very interesting, and her insights and her reactions and her thoughts as a child and as a teenager are really interesting, but they don't really kind of build up to a broader artistic intent or artistic message, in my personal opinion. And I also felt that there was a bit of an emotional wall between Marjan and me as the reader, and I just say that because usually I find it so easy to connect emotionally to things, especially for this subject matter. I was expecting to cry, I was expecting to have stronger emotions, I think, than I did reading it. And I feel that that's because there is a little bit of a lack of self-awareness throughout the graphic novel. This is not to downplay what she went through, but it really felt like kind of, this is my life and I'm presenting it on the page, rather than the feeling of someone who has really like processed what she's gone through or is reflecting back on her experience. And there is like, I think you can feel when there's a level of like self-awareness and vulnerability in the art, and I didn't really feel that in Persepolis. I don't know, I feel really bad saying that because it's such a heavy subject matter, but maybe that was just kind of the wrong expectation. And this is more something where I didn't need to come in with such a big request. Maybe just visually representing what she went through is enough. But yeah, it's hard because I do compare it to the other graphic novels I've read, and I really feel that other artists, illustrators, and authors maybe did more with the medium and were able to really elevate it and use like composition and the structure of the visual representation to really enhance the storytelling. I felt that the storytelling was not as good as I was expecting, given how well known Persepolis is. I would say it's one of the best known graphic novels there is out there. Then after we discussed in book club, which actually none of the book club members really agreed with me. They all loved it. They all felt very emotionally connected to it, especially some of the common themes that they felt, and I do feel as well, of like leaving your home country and having like a dual identity and not knowing whether being less conservative means that you're distancing yourself from your culture and feeling a little bit like you want to be traditional, but also there's problematic parts of the tradition of your culture. I think the rest of my book club members connected better, more effectively to Persepolis. But then after we discussed, we watched the movie, and because there's a 2007 film that has the same artwork, and I think it was directed by Marjan herself as well. And I think the movie did give it a little bit more life because it's animated. The soundtrack or the scoring helped to make it a little bit more engaging for me. But other than cutting out a few parts to make it a really tight 90 minutes, it's not too different from the graphic novel. So I feel like it's neither here nor there whether you watch the movie or you read the graphic novel. She adheres very closely to what she depicts in the graphic novel. So those are my thoughts on Persepolis. Thanks for listening, and do let me know if you've read this. Really crazy timing that we read this. I mean, obviously there's a lot going on in Iran, in that part of the region, that region of the world right now, but also just the fact that she has just passed away is really sad. And I do think she had a very difficult life, and just having read this book, I think we found out the news that she passed away like the day before book club. So just knowing kind of what she went through, and then the fact, I think the press release said that she died of a broken heart because her partner had passed away the year before, and it was very hard for her to get over that. So yeah, I do feel like that adds another layer of context to her life and the life she led. It's very eye-opening, I guess, and maybe I'm treating it too lightly. Just because all this stuff happened doesn't really take away from the fact and the heaviness of having gone through it and living through that. Tehran was like totally decimated, and they went from one not so great government to another not so great government, and the terror that was inflicted upon the people living there just from the morality police. And yeah, it reminds me of the Cultural Revolution in China. So yeah, those are kind of some ramblings on Persepolis. Do let me know if you've read it and what your thoughts are. I think if I had read this maybe when it came out in the mid-2000s, I would have been a little bit more enamored by it. But having read some other really good graphic novels, I was expecting more. So let me know whether you agree or disagree, and I'll catch you in the next video.